Well, everybody, welcome back. This is episode 3 of the Pillow Talk podcast. It's kind of a hard word for me to say. Pillow Talk podcast. And I'm here with Sophia Hartman.
Hello.
So glad you're here. Thank you for preaching last week.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We're going to do this one pretty quick today, but just want to let you know, like, there's multiples coming out, and any questions that we've missed, we're going to make up. We're going to have episodes if we need to, additional ones, part A, part B if we need to, whatever it looks like, to make sure we respond to every question that comes in. So hang tight if we don't get to yours. We want to. Well, some questions. Let's get to it.
Let's
I think
dive
there's
in.
some fun ones, and there's some things that I think will be quick for us.
Yes, I think so.
I think they'll be pretty quick. First one here that I want to throw your way is... what do you do if you are in a situationship and you can't get out of it?
You're trapped. You're stuck.
You're stuck
pinned
forever.
against the wall.
It is the most intense thing ever to be in a
situationship.
Locked forever.
I just don't like that that's even a word. I do like that we have a word to describe that place now. Because yes, I've been in a situationship before and there was no word for that. And I was like, what do I even call this?
This is confusing.
Yeah, it's just confusing. What are we? That whole conversation. If you're stuck in a situationship, get out of it. You're not stuck. I think it's easy, especially in Christianity, to just overcommit ourselves instantaneously, right? Because we go into dating with the intention of marriage, right? Yeah. You want to go into dating with the intention of, hey, there's hopefully a future and a very long future with this person. I don't just want to date them just for 4 seconds and, that's that. But in that intention, we often overcommit ourselves, which is what I have found myself doing before, of overcommitting myself to someone who hasn't put a ring on it, who hasn't said I do to me, and I haven't said I do to them. And
or even less than that, right?
Or even
in a situationship,
way less than that.
It's even more vague than...
So vague, such a gray space. And so... but the truth is that you're not stuck. You're not actually trapped in a situationship. Clarity is kind.
Amen.
Clarity is so, so kind. And for years, I was intimidated to ask my other person in a situationship, hey, what is this? Because I wasn't secure. And I wasn't secure in my love for Jesus. And I wasn't secure in ultimately his love for me. And so it left me in a spot where I was too scared to say, what are we? But at the same time, I didn't know how to get out of it. And so if you're stuck, to get unstuck, ask for clarity, find out what this person is intending with you. And it's okay if it doesn't work out. Yeah. It's okay.
I think those are really good points. And to encourage people too, that I've done things well and done things poorly. And I'm really,
as have I,
really thankful for the times where I'm like, wow, I can look back and go, oh, that was good. Oh, that's what good looks like. Oh, okay. Now I know. Like, wow, I should do more of that. Yeah. And one thing in particular, I think, is sometimes it's because you don't want to broach the subject, or whatever it might be. Other times the subject is broached, but it's like, you both maybe, whatever it is, it's like, I don't know. But in both cases, I think it ultimately falls down to fear. Yeah. It's fear of losing out. It's fear of missing out. It's fear. And fear's not a great motivator unless it's a reverence for the Lord. Yeah. In every other situation, It is not a good motivator. What we are called to be motivated by is love, and not just love for others, but that we ourselves are loved by God. And whether it's having that conversation to say, and taking captive the thoughts of I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to lose out. Fear of loss, fear of
if this doesn't work out, no one else is going to want to be with me. That's a huge fear that I held on to forever.
Totally. This is the best person ever.
And the only person that's ever going to exist for me. Yeah. That's such a lie from the enemy, truly from the enemy. And the other one of just being well, if I don't have someone that I'm talking to at all times, am I even worthy of, it's like, it's okay to not be talking to someone. Yeah. Can I just alleviate that fear? It's okay if you're not talking to someone right now.
Totally.
That's okay. You don't have to.
And I think something that gets missed out on is really, we're afraid of adventure. And so we hold on to the things we can control. It's like, well, I kind of have a line in this pond over here. And I don't want to let go of that. Like there's only like nothing's really biting. It doesn't seem like there's clarity, but like I really don't want to miss out. What if something does bite? And like the whole time God is like, there's an ocean over here. Like throw your hook in the ocean.
I'm over here.
Like, yes.
He's like, hey,
he
over
himself
here.
is the ocean. And like, and in the most practical way, like that looks like even when you're sitting and you're like, man, there's not clarity, even as you're having the conversation and there's not clarity. What does it look like to trust the Lord with your security? Like to entrust yourself to him and to entrust that other person to him. And I found what it most often looks like is bringing clarity, which can be,
it can be scary.
Even when you don't know, when it's ambiguous, bring clarity. So even if you're trying to find clarity and you're both not landing somewhere and you're like, this is ambiguous, bring clarity. So don't leave the conversation with it being ambiguous. Have a clear next step or have a clear, like, this is what I'm going to think about, and have it on the table in your own heart and mind that, like, if it is unclear, what would be most honoring and loving to them and respectful of their time.
Right.
And to say, if it's not clear, then the best option isn't, well, let's keep kind of tagging along. The best option is to say, well, then let's not do this. Then let's just move forward without, and that might change in the future. I don't know, but I'm not going to count on that. And I don't think you should. We're just going to move forward. And for me, the word was, I'm not going to pursue you. I'm not going to pursue you. I appreciate you. I'm thankful for you. These are the things I like about you. But I am making it very clear, I am not pursuing you. And that clarity, when I did that in the moment when that happened for me, was fearful clarity, or it could have been fearful, I guess. But I'm so thankful to have like had the time with the Lord, but also in the moment for the Lord to have secured my heart, and for me to then continue to trust him after the fact.
Right.
And be like, no, Lord, like, if this is an opportunity you want me to have, you will make it happen. And if it's not, I'm still in your hands.
Right.
And so is she. And so, Lord, have your way. Like, you know what's best. Let's go. And it's actually that attitude and heart, which I think brought it back around to a place where it was like, oh, this can happen. It was good. In one situation, a different situation, it didn't come around. And actually in another situation, it did come around to the point where the Lord made it clear, though, like years later, it came back and it was like, nope. No, I should say no right now. But that security in the Lord and that trusting him with the adventure of life, not the whatever I can control. The little bit I can control this, I'm going to do my part, rather than open-handed and saying, Lord, whatever you put in here is good. And you can put something back here, but I'm not going to close my hand around it.
I think that even too, not even just situationships, but dating as well. Because dating, you're still not in covenant with that person. You're still dating them. Yes, and sometimes in Christian relationships, maybe one person is way more into it than the other person is, or whatever. And it can almost feel hard to break up. I've never necessarily had a boyfriend, but I've just heard this from a lot of different people of like, it's so hard to break up because we talked about marriage and we went in with the intention of marriage, but it doesn't seem like that's where that's going. And that one of my professors said this in Bible college, and I was like, God bless you, man, sir, whatever your name is. Thank you for saying this. He said it's better to break up than be in the wrong marriage forever. Yes. And I was like, dang. Because if you put it in those contexts, it's like you're either going to break up or you're going to get married. That's where all these relationships are going, one way or the other. And to be in the wrong one and laying next to the wrong person at night, not that there's this, ethereal one meant for somebody, but there is a wrong one. There's not necessarily one right one, but there can be wrong people to be with. And it's just, that is actually going to hurt you more than the momentary breakup, just because you have to be open-handed with those relationships. It's okay if you date a few people. I think we put bad labels on people of like, oh, well, they've had four boyfriends or 4 girlfriends, and it's like, what? Who put the number on this?
The why and the how matters so much more than like, oh, well, he's asked 10 girls out in the last year, and it's like, okay, but was he super honorable?
Yeah. Was he kind during the process?
Was it like, then good for him. He's like honoring people and taking care of people, and like he's unafraid to offer, like, it's okay. the why and how matters.
Yes.
Okay, we got some other questions here.
Yes.
I don't know if any stood out in particular to you that you're like, let's address this one.
Yes, there was a few that definitely just popped up. And I think one to hit right now is, how do you know if you're idolizing marriage or just or if you just have a healthy God-given desire of it? And I can just speak from experience on this. And you know the difference of when you're idolizing something versus when you have the healthy desire, when you're not envious of those that are already in that season ahead of you.
Jealousy, envy.
Yes. That is such a root of bitterness, and there's a root of anger in that, of like, why them and not me? And so I noticed when my own heart shifted from idolizing marriage and making married people seem like nothing's ever wrong with married people and single people.
That's like the truest statement.
Yeah. Everyone that's married is like, trust me. Yeah. Stay single, like, enjoy this time. But people always tell me, they're like, enjoy your time, Sophia. Don't just rush one to the next, But I think when I stopped getting so frustrated when I'd see another engagement on Instagram, or when I would see another person get married or start having kids or whatever it was, this envy and this rage would almost start to build up on the inside. And that's how I knew it was an idol, because God,
don't take this from me. Don't you dare take this
exactly.
from me. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like, I would just shake in my boots thinking of like, is this ever going to happen for me? That is not a confident statement in Christ of, is it ever going to work out? These like big ultimatums that you kind of pose to yourself of like, it's all or it's nothing. And my mom used to be like, don't throw yourself that into the, the black or the white on it. Like, just wait and see what God would have. Just enjoy the fact that, you're in the place that you're at right now. And so I know I have a healthy desire now because I still want it, but I'm not salivating for it.
Yeah, it's good. I think that leads well into another question here, which is, how do you know if you're called to singleness?
Yeah.
And especially if you don't want to be single forever. How do you know if you're called to it? And that comes out of a passage where Paul talks about the benefit of singleness, and that's the place that he's in, and he hopes more would be called to that, right. Because of what it delivers. And I guess I'll just address that because I think it connects.
Go for
it. First of all, singleness is, if you are single, welcome, you have been called to being single. I, for a time, was called to be single. Now, for a time, till I die, I'm called to be married.
A longer time.
Yeah. And so much of this, I think, stems from this, it goes to that control. We think about the future and we think, I need to have the future I want. Rather than, Lord, I want the future you have in mind.
Right.
Because whatever you have in mind is best. And that's true for me. I think it's easy to think, well, you're married, Brian, so that's not a problem. I did desire to be married. That was a desire I had. But it was something, I got married when I was 29. There's processes and times of the Lord prying my hand open to say, Lord, I'd still really like this, but if you want to take it from me, I trust you more than I trust what I think as best for me. And even still, I have to operate that way because I don't know what might befall my wife or myself. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know the one who knows. I know the one who, no matter what happens tomorrow, can hold my heart in a way that it can truly be secure. And so if you're in a place where you are single, embrace the gift God has given you. Don't resent it. Now, he's given it to you right here and now. And the only thing you can actually handle and do, you can only deal with the thing that you currently have. You can only deal with the present moment. The future is not yet here. So stop trying to grab onto it and control it and manage it. Release it to the Lord and say, how do I make what I have right here and now the most fruitful thing possible?
Yes.
And not waste it.
Yes.
For whatever it is.
And focusing on that fruit. It's easy to look at the tree next to you. Like I was just talking about the envy and jealousy thing. Looking at the tree next to you and being like, man, I want fruit like that. It's like, but what's in your hand? What's it right? What's in your capability to start watering and letting sun on that thing and just desires, branches that God would lift up out of darkness up higher on the vine to say, hey, This thing is still here.
Yes.
And if you did have somebody else, it would actually be taking away from them for you to accomplish this thing that I have for you, because you want to start spending all your time with this person. Rightfully so, right? You and Amy had to get to know each other. You had to spend time together. You had to forsake everyone else for her. It's a big thing. It's a cost. It comes with a cost. And just like following Jesus comes with a cost. Falling in love with Jesus comes at a high price of forsaking all others for him. And so it's the same thing with husband and wife, where it's like you have to forsake all others for that person. But if God has you doing this awesome thing right now, you would have to forsake that to go find somebody else or to go pursue this relationship. And so pour yourself into the thing that you love that's right in front of your eyes.
And I just want to encourage people too with this, that like, even if you're in a place where for whatever reason, singleness, when you do look to the future, you see like, okay, like I am currently single, but I do also see, because of circumstances, because of whatever it might, there's a variety of reasons where you're like, but it seems like singleness is in a way what I'm destined for. That is not, it doesn't change anything really. It doesn't change anything. As far as what do you do with the present moment? And in that, to not fear, what am I missing out on? Because really, when you're so preoccupied with what am I missing out on in a very specific place, you're actually missing out on all the things that are right here that you can actually have.
Totally.
And so embrace what God has given you. And this is true for somebody, as a married man, I have to do the same thing. As a man with children, the sacrifices are immense, the things that I have to give up in order to embrace the gift that is in front of me. It means, and this is a struggle at times, I think, for all of us, no matter what stage we're in, but like to not resent the gift of children because, man, I'm so tired. To not resent it, but to embrace it. And the gift comes with responsibility and it comes with costs, but it also comes with huge opportunities. And that's true in every single gift God gives.
Every single one, every stage.
Embrace the gift itself for all that it is, so that the opportunity that gift is can truly flourish and become all that it is, rather than resenting the fact that like, it's so hard. And that attitude and that posture towards the Lord is the thing that never tarnishes. That never like
never wears out
ugly.
Over time.
Yeah, that's the thing that is like, that's valuable. That produces eternal things. That no matter circumstance, I am with you, Lord, and I trust you, and I want to embrace what you're giving me, whatever that looks like. And the hard part is I have to like work to be in that practice, because what if the Lord takes a child from me? What if Amy passes? My heart needs to continue to be in that place of, Lord, I trust you, and whatever gifts you give, I will embrace. And whatever gifts you pull, I will embrace, because I trust your heart more than I trust what I think is best. You're making the kingdom. You're not making just my life. My life fits into that kingdom.
In James, it says, every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father of lights. And so these gifts, whether it be singleness, whether it be marriage, whether it be kids, they're good and they're perfect in his sight.
Yes, they are.
Right? And so he gives them, it's like on Christmas, it's exciting that you got the toy, but the more exciting part is to play with said toy. But often we get the gift and we look at it in its box and we're like, sweet. And then we just walk away, right? We don't just walk away from cool new toys or cool new things. It's like, no, I want to use that thing till it almost breaks. Like, I had a Barbie car as a kid. It's like, you want to use that Barbie car till the day that battery unfortunately dies.
Or you outgrew it.
Yeah, or I got taller, which I'm not that tall, so I still could probably fit inside. But it's like, it would be silly of us to think that on Christmas the whole experience is just about opening the gifts and being like, cool, there it is, and walking away from it. No, you want to play with it. You want to experience it. The whole point why you got excited about getting it in the first place is because now you get to access what was in that box.
Totally.
Now you get to see what the full potential is of that box, of this season. And so Enjoy singleness, because you know what? There's probably, for a lot of people, an expiration date on that singleness, and you truly will not get that time back.
Yeah. And for those who perhaps there is no expiration date on your singleness, you still won't get the time back.
You never will. You never get your 21st year of your,
You
life.
still won't get it back. So what are you doing with it? What are you doing with it right here and now? Your life has started.
Yes.
It's already started.
It began when you said yes to Jesus.
Yeah.
Not when you said yes to Mr. Situationship or Mrs. Situationship. So, next question that we're going to tackle.
Next question.
Is what if the person you're interested in is in a healing season? What does it look like to even heal from a past relationship, whether that be you or the person that you're interested in? And how do you be patient, or how do you practice patience during that time? Why don't we start with the healing side of that question, and then we'll hit the patience.
Self-healing.
If you are healing, and then what to do with the person that you may be interested in that is in a healing season themselves.
Yeah, I think, if you yourself are in a healing season, that implies something went wrong.
You would think, yes.
That implies something did not go well.
Something got hurt.
Somewhere, yes. And so I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is don't pretend like nothing bad happened, and don't pretend like you didn't have a role to play. There's always something to be learned.
Yeah.
And so be in a place where you can take time to healing doesn't mean feeling better. Healing means actually doing the work so that it doesn't happen again. So that you're stronger, so that you're more resilient, so that you're wiser. And that will make you not just feel better right now, but not have to feel that pain again.
There's longevity to
in
that.
Quite the same way.
Yeah.
Or at least you'll be in a better spot to deal with and navigate things. And so that takes time. I think that takes also wisdom of others. It's not just something you can do on your own. Process with people, get counsel. There's books you can read, there's stuff like that, which also I'll just say most things that you read them not as Bible, because there's only one, but read them as suggestions and navigate that. Bring the things you read to others.
Yes.
And be like, I read this. How does that fit? Does that apply to me? Or how could that apply to me in this place? And all of that, I think, just comes around to learn the lessons that can be learned. And I don't remember. I'm really tired.
And hopefully don't make the mistakes that were made prior.
Yeah.
Don't make them again.
Yes.
Not don't make them again, but they hurt you, whether they were your mistakes, somebody else's mistakes, the type of person that you were just with that hurt you really bad.
Yeah.
I was just, right before we started recording this, I was telling you about somebody who had just been in my life for a really big season, romantically, unromantically, whatever. And I for a long time was I want to find someone just like that. And the Lord was like, why? Because he hurt you. Why do you want to be with somebody just like that?
Yeah.
Sure, certain qualities.
Yeah.
But the overall, everyone you're with after this guy has to be the carbon copy of this guy. It's that's what hurt you. And so, but it took time in the presence of God to hear him say, hey, let's set our sights elsewhere. Because every guy you meet either doesn't measure up to him or is exactly like him.
Yeah.
And you're just going to wind up in the same place that you were before. Yeah,
the qualities thing is key too, I think, of figuring out, asking the Lord and working through the differentiating, okay, what truly was the thing? And that matters.
Yes.
Where did things, it's easy to be where did things go wrong? And then you're he said, she said, you're well, he, and it's easier, or she. It's easier to be self-justifying, but to have that sober-mindedness to be even if this went wrong, what can I do about it? What could I have done different to address that sooner, or whatever it might be, or be more aware? The other thing, I remembered it now.
There you go.
Is to recognize that just because you've dealt logically with things doesn't mean your heart doesn't still have soul ties to things, and doesn't have forgiveness that needs to be offered. And all of that stuff is going to linger. And until you release someone else, you're not really in a place to enter in with another.
Yeah.
And
150%. Yes.
There might be things, there might be friends there might be people that help you on that journey of healing that then become the person that you're like, oh, wow, this is really good. Let's go together in this.
This is, yeah.
But it's a thing of you got to break some of that heart stuff. And I'll just say that I think Sophia or myself would be happy to help in some of that, navigating that. Certainly there's prayer and spend time in God's word. Prayer, both that we could probably help with in some practical ways, and maybe we can come up with some resources or something. Some
resources, yes.
I know they are there, but maybe we could put them in a consolidated place to kind of be like, hey, here's like a prayer of forgiveness, and just with some blanks, fill this in. There are people who have gone before us, who have treaded these waters, and have left a map for us to follow, and it's worth following it. And so some of this sort of stuff is things that we could provide that might help, because I know for myself, sometimes I'm like, I just feel, but I don't know what to do about it. And I've been in situations where I've just been given a prayer from some other saint some long days ago and been able to pray through it myself, and even like take, names out and put the name that I need to put, or situation or whatever it is, or my own. And that led me to the places in my heart I didn't know I needed to go to. And that was the map I needed. Yes. To be like, oh, that's where I needed to go to meet you, Lord. And for you to be like, there it is. That's what I'm going to pull out. And,
and same for the person. If you're interested in somebody that is healing, there has to be time for that person to
love them, not just yourself.
Yes. And so I would say, even if you're like, well, the Lord told me, or the Lord highlighted this person to me, whatever that may be, God is never going to rush his own healing process in someone else's life so that you can feel more secure because you're in a relationship. That could be your future whoever. That could be your future spouse. That could be them. Odds are, like, there's a 50-50 chance. So it's like they either are or they aren't. But to say that he's like, to say that the Lord is putting the pressure on it to be now, well, I just can't get rid of this feeling. Well, I'm just so, it's infatuation. It's not godly love, because in 1 Corinthians 13, it says love is patient.
First word.
Literally right out the gate. And patience. The Lord has used that, not against me, but he has used that
for your sake,
with me. Yes, he has used those words with me before, where I've been like, all right, Lord, I can see it. The wedding bells are ringing. And he's like, love is patient. It is long suffering.
Yes.
And I'm like, why? And it's also kind. And kindness keeps you out of their healing process, because if they heal with you, you become their savior in that process. They don't even have to be healing from another past relationship. They could be healing from a loss. They could be grieving a loss of a job or a loss of a loved one or whatever it may be. Whatever their healing process is that they're going through, if you insert yourself and attach yourself with love to that person, now their source could potentially become you.
Yeah, I would just clarify on that, if that's a worldly sense of love.
Yes.
In the Lord's sense, I think truly right. Love always protects.
Yes.
And so we're called to
romantic
protect.
attachment.
Yeah, the emotional longing.
Love has like 1,000 definitions in the English language, and not all of them are correct. So.
It's so good. Like I think just that thinking of what actually serves them best. And this is true not just for someone that's healing. This is true for everybody.
Yeah.
In every situation, the desire isn't what can I get, but it's how can I provide for them? How can I care for them right now? And that I'm willing to die to self for their sake. And that can get confusing, I guess. I know that can get manipulated in ways that aren't good. Hold your boundaries, like you shouldn't be trampled. But what does it mean to actually not demand something from somebody, but to say, I actually care enough about you to let you go?
Yes. and submit that interest to the feet of Jesus. If you have to do it daily, I've had to do it daily. I've had to do it hour by hour where I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm resubmitting this to your feet because I put it there and then I picked it back up and then I put it back down and then I picked it back up. And so the Lord loves that. He loves the journey with you. He loves the process with you, as long as it ends up with full submission to his will for your life and for that person's life.
And I think all that goes back to the last question, a part of this question, which is how do you be patient during that time? And I think we've actually addressed it, addressing the other ones, which is...
you love them with godly love.
Yes.
Which is patience.
And to be patient during that time, if you're not with them, you're not with them. So don't pretend like you are. If you remember from a couple weeks ago, I shared this idea of a stool analogy. When that leg of emotion grows much longer than it needs to, and you're tying yourself to them in a way where it's like, actually, that's not where the relationship's at. In the past, I've used the example of a stick shift in a car. Maybe you ride a bike with gears. You understand there's proper gears. You have to be in the right gear for the speed you're going. And so often the trouble comes when the reality of the commitment of the relationship is here.
Yeah, and you're like...
Yes, like you're in first gear. You should be in first gear because that's where you're actually at. You like him, he likes you, or you like her and she likes
no
you.
idea how.
And you're like, okay, and you're figuring it out. And if they're like, I'm healing and I need space, that means like you're not even pedaling. Like the
bike
engine
is still in the garage.
Isn't even started. Actually bring yourself, hold like restrain yourself to that place, because that's what positions you to actually care for them the best way, and positions you to not be yoking yourself in a way that's not true to where you're actually at.
Yes. To be it's unequally yoking, right? Being unequally yoked to somebody is, people are like, well, it's our spiritual levels. No, you could literally just be so far ahead emotionally than somebody else is in this thing that you're thinking marriage and they're like, I just learned your favorite color.
Totally.
You know, it's like patience. In scripture it says, let patience have its perfect work.
Yeah.
There's a perfect work to patience where it rounds out all the rough edges of, oh, you know what? I never saw that side of that person, but because I was patient and, you know, all of a sudden I went full circle with them in this situation. Now I see a side where I'm like, okay, maybe we aren't a match, you know? Like in Bible college, it's very famous, Ring by Spring. People have heard that. I went to Bible college. I was not a Ring by Spring person, but I have a lot of friends that were Ring by Spring. And I always used to ask them, like, what do they like when they have a cold? And they were like, well, they've never had a cold. I'm like, yeah, because you've been together for 2 months and you got married. That was pretty quick. You've never experienced, you don't even know, do they like Christmas? You never even celebrated a holiday together. You know, just this need for speed in relationships when it's like, just take it down, let patience have its perfect work. And that doesn't necessarily flow on a timeline like linearly, because the Lord works different in different timelines. But all that to say that patience is going to have its perfect work if you let it. Yeah. And so you're going to see the things you need to see. You're going to see them on Christmas and be like, oh, they love Christmas. So do I. Great. You know, or you're going to see them with their grandparents and see how they interact with elderly people. Or you're going to see them on a trip to another state and see how they do on an airplane. You know, it's like things that you don't necessarily find out when you rush and have to get to the finish line to, again, it's out of desperation where that need for this just idolization and crave comes from, of like, I have to have this. That phrase right there should prove that your heart is not in the right place to necessarily be where you're at.
And I'll say with that too, like I can't stand and say, silly you.
I've done the exact thing. I can describe it because I've done it.
Yes, been in those places. And one thing about that too is, and this is wherever the relationship is, whoever is the least committed, that's where you both should be. Whoever's like, this is where we're at, that's where you both should be. There's no like, well, I'm here and I'm pulling the other person. No. Right. You rein yourself back in. So if they're like, I need time and space, aka we're not doing this, then you need, for your own sake, for their sake, the healthy move is to hold yourself at that same level. To be like, that's where they're at. That's where we're at. We are not a thing. We're not a thing. We're not.
Hard words to hear, but good.
And those hard things doesn't mean bad things always. A lot of times some of the harder things are the things that actually will in the long run pay the dividends.
Totally.
And one thing we didn't address, and maybe we'll talk about another time, is just dating in general. Like, dating is super weird. It's super weird. Like, and it's actually new. It's a newer concept. Predominantly a Western thing, and like kind of within the last 100 years. Like before that, like it just wasn't. The way it is now is totally different. Now I don't think I can necessarily condemn it and say it's bad. Morally a terrible thing. I don't think I have that ground to stand on, but I think it is the environment we operate in. And so we need to figure out, what do we do with this and how do we do it well? Because it hasn't been the norm for centuries and for millennia. It hasn't at all. It's actually very recent and very abnormal for humanity as a whole. Like, this is a weird thing that our society does. I don't necessarily know that it's the best way, but it's the reality that that's where we're at. So we can't say definitively in ways like, this is how it's supposed to work, because it's like,
the Bible doesn't really address
God didn't create it like this. God created singleness and marriage.
Yeah.
That's what he created. You're either married or you're single. And that played out in society in varied ways. But I even think back to my grandparents, and I think in the 30s and 40s when they 40s probably when they became a thing. Like, the idea of dating was very different. And it was much more like, my grandpa was like, hey, you seem like a solid woman who loves the Lord. I love the Lord.
Let's do this.
They went on a couple dates, and then it was like, let's get married. And that sounds wild to us today, but it's because the context we're in. And that commonality. What they had back then was there was much more of a smaller communal vibe where, like, if you're raised in that community, the commonalities of your views on the world and how the world works, on what is supreme and matters in life, the Lord, the gospel, what that looks like, how does that play out in your life? That was much more common. Also, and super importantly, is your view of marriage. What is this thing that we're entering into? And when the commitment of marriage was so standard, it was, now the commitment of marriage is
all over the place.
Is much looser, and that's where, because of the ambiguity, the looseness of the covenant of marriage, that is what puts all the pressure on dating. Is because we don't have a solid understanding and commitment to the covenant of marriage as a culture in general. But that doesn't mean we as believers have to stay in that place. Right. We can work and position ourselves mentally, and the people that we interact with and we date, whatever that looks like, and work through with them to be like, what is marriage? What are we doing? What is this covenant? How solid is this thing? And am I going to enter into it? And what am I willing to surrender for this covenant?
Right.
And to be united in that. Dating is really the process of discovering that.
Right.
Do they follow and love the Lord? And are they in a place where, can you look at them and have you experienced them enough to say, there's clarity about their trajectory and understanding of where they're going in life, and clarity about how they view this covenant of marriage, and we're aligned in both things. And so what time does it take for that to become clear? And we'll talk more about it next week, because we're talking about who we date. It should be good. Any final remarks?
Falling in love with Jesus is the best thing you can ever do. And so that's my best piece of advice, is falling in love with Jesus is the best thing that you can do, because he'll show you his kingdom, he'll show you himself, and he'll guide you into all truth, because in him is the Spirit of truth, which is the same Spirit that raised Jesus Christ from the dead. The Holy Spirit lives on the inside of you the second you say yes to him. And so let the Spirit of truth guide you into all truth. And these issues will get solved. You can listen to a podcast like this, amazing, but better to hear it from the lips of God than from the lips of man. Use this as a complementary resource, but don't use resources as a supplement to the word, to the word of God that could come, in a moment of just tuning into what he has to say. So
yeah, amen.
That's all I have to say.
Amen to that. Relationship status it doesn't impact.
It doesn't define you.
Who you are and what you can do and what the Lord has in mind for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't limit it either. It doesn't limit him.
So thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Sophia. And
so much fun.
We will see you next week.